Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Gift. In this video I'll be making this very beautiful hair-shaped dress with color. So I'll be drafting the pattern first before transferring it to my fabric. I already have my vertical lines on this paper. The first line is my shoulder line, then the second line is my bust point line, my under bust line, my waist line, my hip line, and the dress length. Just go ahead and take your measurements and mark them. On my shoulder line, I just marked my shoulder measurement divided by 2, which is 8 inches. From the 8 inches, I came down by 1 inch as my shoulder slope. Then from the shoulder slope, I divided my round armhole measurement into 2, which gave me 8 inches. I marked it there and I connected the armhole measurement to the shoulder slope. Then I'm slanting the line to this other side of the paper as my chest line. For the neckline, I took the width of 3 inches and the depth of 3 inches, and I'm going to connect both of them together like this. So I'm supposed to mark a round neckline, so I'm just going to use these parts to correct what I've done to make it a bit round. Just make sure you use the right part of your curve driller, or you can use your freehand. So I'm going to connect the shoulder slope to the neckline area like this. Now I'm going to be marking that's my nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2, which gave me 4 inches. So I marked it on my waistline, on my under bust line, and my bust point line, and I'm going to connect all the dots together on a straight line. Then I'm going to come down by 4 inches from my waistline, and I'm going to connect it to the dot line like this. On the waistline, I'm going to go out by half an inch on both sides of the dart line, and I'm going to connect it to my under bust line. Then I'm going to connect it like this to the 4 inches line. Then I'm going to connect it upward also to my bust point line. Now I'll be marking the midpoint of my armhole line. So I'm going to fold my tape into 2 equal parts like this and mark the midpoint. Then I'm going to go out by half an inch from that midpoint. On my chest line, I'm going to mark my bust measurements divided by 4 there. Then I'm going to connect the midpoint to it. Then I'm going to connect the upper parts of it to my shoulder slope like this. Then I'm going to connect the dart line like this from the bust point to the midpoint of my armhole line. Hope you guys get what I'm saying. If you don't get what I'm saying, just look at what I'm doing. So I'm going to extend the line to this point like this. So I'm going to come down by 1 inch from that line, and I'm going to connect it back to the bust point line like this. I came down by 1 inch and I'm connecting it back to the bust point line. So I'm going to go up by 1 inch from this new line. Please ensure you do this so when you are joining this part, you will not run short of fabric. So if you do this, it will be equal. So I'm going to use my marker to trace it out to make the line more visible so you guys can see it. So I'm going to connect this point to my bust measurement on my chest line like this. So this will be the new armhole. Now I'm going to be marking my body measurement. So on this point, I already have my bust measurements divided by 4. Then on my under bust line, I'm going to mark my under bust measurements divided by 4 as well. On my waistline, I'm going to mark my waist measurements divided by 4. On my hip line, I'm going to mark my hip measurement divided by 4. Whatever I have on my hip line, I'm going to mark on the dress length. So I'm marking my hip measurements there, and I'm going to connect all the points together like this. Because this is an A-shape dress, I'm going to be adding the A-shape allowance. On my hip line, I'm going to be coming out by 2 inches from my actual body measurement. Then on the dress length, I'm going to be marking 3 inches. There you can decide to take 2.5 inches. It depends on how full you want the A-shape to be, or how big you want it to be rather. Then I'm going to connect the points together like this. So this is the allowance for the A shape. Now I'm going to be adding allowance. So I'm going to be replacing the allowance for the dart, and I'm going to be adding 2 inches as my seam allowance. Yeah, I measured the dart, what I had there, I marked it, and I added 2 inches seam allowance to the side. So on my hip line, I'm going to add 1 inch as the allowance. Then I'm going to connect all the dots together like this. I hope you guys understand what I'm saying. So on the hip line where the allowance is already, I added 1 inch. On the dress length also, I added 1 inch. So I'm going to cut out the excess part on it from the paper, and I splitted the pattern into 2 from the waistline. So I splitted it from the waistline because I'll be cutting an half length. So if you want to remove the darts, you can go ahead and fold in the darts like this, or you can as well leave it. Now I'll be working on the back. I added my zipper allowance of 2 inches. I have my shoulder line, my bust point line, my waistline, my hip line, and the dress length. So there is no under bust line for the back. So on the shoulder line, I'm going to mark my shoulder measurements divided by 2, which is 8 inches. I'm going to come down by 1 inch for as my shoulder slope. Then I'm going to come down by 8 inches for the from the shoulder slope as my round armhole measurements divided by 2. Then I'm going to curve out the line like this. For the neckline, I'm going to be taking the width of 3 inches and the depth of 8 inches. So the depth of the neckline depends on how deep you want it to be, how open you want it to be rather. Mine was not that open, so you can extend yours if you want to. So I'm going to connect both points together like this. Note that I'm taking all the measurements for the back after the zipper allowance line, so ignore your zipper allowance line. So I'm going to connect the shoulder slope to the neckline area like this. On the chest line, I'm going to mark my bust measurements divided by 4. Then I'm going to mark the midpoint of my armhole line, which is 4 inches. Then I'm going to connect it to the bust measurements on the chest line like this. On my waistline, I'm going to mark my waist measurements divided by 4. Then on my hip line, I'm going to mark my hip measurements divided by 4. I'm going to mark the same thing I have on my hip line on the dress length. Then I'm going to connect all the dots together like this. So I'll be repeating the same thing I did for the front. For the A-shape allowance, on my hip line I came out by 2 inches. Then on the dress length line, I came out by 3 inches. Then I'm going to connect it like this to the waistline and to the dress length. So this is what I basically did. So I'm going to add my seam allowance to the side. Before I do that, I'm going to mark my dart. My nipple to nipple measurements divided by 2 is 4 inches. So I added half an inch to it as the allowance because I'm working directly on my fabric. So what I'm marking for the dart is 4.5 inches. Then I came down by 5 inches from my waistline because this is the dart for the back. I came down by 5 inches. So I'm going to go out by half an inch on both sides of the dart line. Then I'm going to connect it like this to the bust point line. Then I'm going to connect it down like this to the 5 inches line I came down by. Now I'm going to be adding my seam allowance of 2 inches on the chest line. On the waistline, I'm going to replace the dart. Then I'm going to add the 2 inches seam allowance. On the hip line, I'm going to add 1 inch. On the dress length also, I'm going to add 1 inch. Then I'm going to connect all the dots together. Then I'm going to cut out the excess fabric I don't need. I'm going to split the fabric into two from the waistline. Before I do that, I'm going to notch the 2 inches allowance I added to the down part. I'll be using my lining to drag that in, so I notched it. That is where my lining is going to stop. So on the waistline, on the zipper allowance, I came out by half an inch. Then I'm going to connect it to the top part of the fabric like this. Then I'm going to connect it down like this. Also, I'm doing this in order to eliminate any form of zipper bulge. So I'm going to split the pattern open from my waistline. So ensure you add 1 inch to your actual waist measurement. I did the same thing for the front. My waist measurement is 15 inches. I added 1 inch to it, so I marked 16 inches on my fabric. So I went ahead to use the front pattern to cut the fabric, and this is what I have. This is my center front. You can see I've gone ahead to iron estate to it, and I cut out the lining to same thing as the main piece. I ironed estate to the lining as well. So this is the side front. I have 2 pieces for the side front. I went ahead to cut the lining piece too, and I ironed estate to it. So this is what I have, and this is how I'm going to join it. I'm going to start joining it from so I'll start joining it from the waist upward, that is from the down to the top. So I'm going to do the same thing for the other side. Then I'm going to do the same thing for the lining piece as well. So ensure that while you're cutting your fabric with your pattern, or while you're using your pattern to cut your fabric, ensure you add allowance to it. So this is the back. I went ahead to cut the lining to two lining pieces because I have 2 pieces for the back. So I'm going to use the lining to turn it. So I'm going to close up the neckline and the 2 sides of the fabric with the lining. I'm going to leave the shoulder and the armhole with the down parts opened. So this is the skirt part for the front. So I'm going to remove the pattern from it so you guys can see it. So I want to drag 2 inches in with my lining. So my lining is 2 inches shorter than the actual length of this skirt, and I went ahead to iron this paper stay to my fabric in order for it to give my fabric the strength to be able to stand just like the style inspiration. So I'm going to sew these down parts of the I'm going to join the lining from the down part of the skirt first. Then I'm going to drag the 2 inches in. Then I'm going to close up I'm going to sew both sides of it. So I'm going to trim the paper that is on that part I want to drag in. So for the back also, I went ahead to cut my lining. My lining is 2 inches shorter than my actual fabric, and I ironed the paper stay to the back also. So I'm going to use the lining to turn the back. So I'm going to start sewing from the down parts of the back also. So I'm going to sew from the down part. I'll drag the 2 inches in, then I'm going to sew both sides. So I'm going to trim that paper from the 2 inches I want to drag in. I went ahead to join this part of my front fabric, and this is what I have. So I joined the main fabric, I opened the seams and iron it flat. I did the same thing for the lining. Now I'm going to turn the fabric with my lining. I'm going to sew the neckline and the 2 sides, then I'm going to turn it over to the right side and iron it flat. So I went ahead to turn the back with the lining piece and I ironed it, and this is what I have. Now I'm going to take the dart for both sides. So I'll be using this fabric to cut my sleeves. It's folded into two and I'm going to fold it over like this again. Down it's folded into four. So at the top of the fabric I'm going to rule a straight line, which is going to serve as the starting line. From the starting line, I'm going to mark my bust measurement, my round bust measurements divided by 12 plus half an inch. That is 3.5 inches. So I'm going to be marking the 3.5 inches. Then I'm going to roll out all the dots on a straight line. On this line, I'm going to mark my round armhole measurements divided by 2 plus 1 inch seam allowance. That is, I marked 9 inches there. Then at the top on the starting line I marked 2 inches. Then I'm going to connect both points together with my free hand. This point I'm going to mark my round arm measurements divided by 2 plus 1.5 inches seam allowance. So I'm adding 1.5 inches because I'm going to turn this with my lining, so I will not run short of fabric. Then I'm going to connect all the points together like this. So the length of this fabric is 9.5 inches, so I'm going to leave it this way. The actual length of my sleeves is 8 inches. I'm going to mark it, so I'm going to sew in half an inch with the lining. Then I'm going to drag in 1 inch. So I'm going to cut out the excess parts of the fabric I don't need. I'm going to notch the center of the sleeves. Then I'm going to open it up and split the fabric into two. Then I'm going to fold the sleeves back and notch where the actual length of my sleeves is. So I'm going to notch this part so that I will drag the remaining parts in with the lining. So I'm going to cut my lining. So I'm done joining the front half length to the skirt part after turning the skirt and the up part with the lining. And this is what I have. I did the same thing for the back too. I took the dart, I joined the half length together and I ironed the zipper allowance flat like this, and this is what I have. So I'm going to join the two shoulders together. I'm going to add my zipper to the back, and this is the sleeves. I turned it with the lining, and this is what I have. So I'm going to attach my sleeves to it after joining the shoulders together. Then I'm going to close up both sides with my measurements. So I'm done joining the shoulders together. I'm yet to join the sleeves. I added zipper to the back. So I'm going to measure the neckline round. Whatever I have is going to be the width of the collar. So from the zipper I'm going to measure it round to the other zipper. So after measuring mine round, I had 30 inches. So the width of the collar is going to be 30 inches. I'll be using this fabric for the collar, so I'm going to open it up like this so that you guys can see it. It's folded into two equal parts and I'm going to fold it over like this again. So the length on fold is 5 inches. If I open it up, it's 10 inches. So this is what I have. So I'm going to arrange it properly. Then I'm going to mark from the center. I'm going to mark 15 inches. Then from that 15 inches I'm going to add 4 inches extra to the side. I'm going to connect the 4 inches on a straight line to the top of the fabric. Then I'm going to connect the 15 inches in a slanted way like this to that 4 inches. So what you do, this 15 inches, you can make yours 15.5 inches. It depends on what you have. So I'm just assuming if you have 15 inches, you make it 15.5 inches because I'll be sewing both sides in like this. And ensure you notch the center of the fabric. So I'm done sewing it and I turned it over to the right side and I ironed it. So this is what I have now. So I'm going to fold my fabric into two equal parts like this. I'm going to fold the dress rather into two equal parts. Then I'm going to mark where the center is. Ensure you fold it properly so that your measurement will be accurate. Then I'm going to take the collar also. Then I'm going to mark the center of the collar. I'm going to fold it into two equal parts. Then I'm going to notch the collar. I already did that while I already did that, so I'm just going to attach it to my dress like this. So I'm going to place it on the wrong side of my dress. So I'm going to place it on the wrong side of the neckline. Then I'm going to pin it around to the neckline till where it stops. So I'm starting from the center so that it will be accurate on both sides. So I'm going to pin from this center to the end, then I'm going to pin from the other center to the end, then I'm going to stitch it to my fabric. So I'm done joining the collar to the fabric. So this is what I have. This is what the back looks like and this is what the front looks like. So we are going to turn the collar over on the fabric like this. So this is what I have. So before I add my sleeves to this, I'm going to trim the armhole because it's now smaller. So I'm going to use my office pin to pin it down. So make sure you pin it down so it's both sitting well on each other before you trim it. So after pinning them together, I'm going to measure what I have there. If it's not up to my round armhole measurement plus the allowance I added to it, then I'm going to trim it out. So what I want to have here is at least 8.5 inches or 9 inches. So it's up to, so I'm just going to trim out the excess part of the fabric, like the stay popping out, like this other part is not up to, so I trimmed it out a bit. Now I'm going to attach my sleeves round to it, then I'm going to close up that part. I'm going to do the same thing for the other side. So you can join your sleeves from the center to the end, to both ends, so it will be accurate and easy for you. I'm done attaching the sleeves to the dress and this is what I have. So with this you have come to the end of this tutorial. Thank you guys for watching till this far. Please don't forget to like this video, leave your question in the comment section, and I'll see you guys in my next tutorial. Bye guys and thanks for watching.